Welcome to Roll for Crit and our review of the game from AEG called Inner Compass, a game that we could probably all use right now as it is about centering yourself and finding peace with your inner emotions. You will be placing your player pieces onto the board in various places and playing cards that represent various emotions in order to find your inner compass and also get the most points to win the game.
That is right. And before we go explain this, I think we should take the first step in the setup and take a deep breath and collect yourself to think about what is important. And that is watching the rest of this video. Moving forward, on your turn, you will have the option to move your head around and you'll use that to collect cards. Now, at the beginning, depending on where you are, you may get a free movement if there are a grouping of colors, so you can move to anywhere within this blue block. Once you move, depending on what direction you move, you gain a card in that direction. So in this case, the yellow head move up, it takes the card at the very top. This person receiving a puppy for Christmas. So happy. And because the card they took matched the color of the square they're on, they will get to take an additional card off the top because they are in sync. Now, let's say I didn't really want that card and I wanted to get across. You can forfeit getting a card to move again. So you do have that option. These cards, though, they're what you're going to use to help you score points. Once you're on a tile, so let's move to this white tile over here for now, you can discard a number of cards matching the tile you're on and the number on that. So the white cards always need 3, blue 2, they change depending on the values here. So let's say I discarded 3 white cards. That is love, by the way. And I would get a number of points here, wherever the tile is. So that's 6, quite a bit. Enlightenment points, as they are called. You will then place one of your player cubes from your own little board that will look like this. Once again, matching the color onto the board. You will then take this white card, which you just scored, move it to the back of the line so it can't score as much. So if you repeat it, it'll only be worth 1. And as you can see, this will keep moving things up around so they change value of points. Should the X reach the top, it just moves back down. It's just holding a spot, more or less.
When you take a piece from your board to place onto the main board, it has to come from a color matching the color of the space that it is now entering. If you happen to have already used all of those pieces of that color from your personal board, then you can take them from anywhere that you like. The reason this is important is because if you manage to clear out either a row or column entirely from your board, so they're totally empty of pieces, then at the end of your turn, you get to take one of your value tokens and place it on to one of the spaces next to a quality tile that you can see on the right. Each game they will have different ones available, and those determine how you score points at the end of the game. So first of all, if you're the first player to place a value token there, you get a bonus of 3 points right away. Anyone who comes after that doesn't get those 3 points, but they're still a part of that quality tile for the end game scoring. Now, each one of those has a different condition that you need to meet. For example, the variety tile up there wants you to have at least 2 pieces in each quadrant of the board, each corner section of the board. And for each one of those that you have, you'll get a certain amount of points as indicated on the bottom. The ones on the right tend to be simpler. For example, here, they involve being next to certain colored tiles. So for candor, if you have a piece that is next to a red square on the main board, but not on a red square itself, then each one of those is worth 2 points. Now you only have 2 value tiles. So by the end of the game, you're only going to be scoring 2 of these, and not everyone is going to be scoring the same ones necessarily. So you have to decide if you want to go for those point bonuses by getting into something early, or wait until later in the game to figure out exactly what your strategy is or what you have set up to guarantee that you can get the most points. Or you might want to have something that you don't think you're competing with anyone else in, or maybe specifically go for something that you want to compete with someone else in to stop them from getting points. Once someone manages to clear out a 3rd row or column, they don't have a 3rd value token to place. Instead, that triggers the end of the game. You finish out the round, count up the points, and whoever has the most is the winner, and they've found their inner compass.
That is right. So basically, this is an abstract game using emotions as sort of a theme to explain it, where you're going to move around to different colors to place your cubes and hopefully take cubes off your own board in a way to clear out the columns or rows as quickly as possible.
A big part of this game, I think, is hand management. You are dealing with the different colors in your hand and trying to decide where you're able to move on the board and where the colors are showing at any given time for the face-up cards. That's really the meat of it, is trying to figure out, well, I want to get red cards because the red token currently is going to give me the most points for placement, but the red card that I can see is up at the top, and I don't want to move up necessarily. So is it worth it for me to move up there, but then it doesn't work for me? There's a lot of these things that I think are a short-term versus long-term in terms of what your optimal plays are. And I think that's where the game becomes interesting to me, is deciding how do I want to make those moves, and when is the right time to sacrifice those plays.
There's definitely a lot of hand management. If you actually look back at that scoring board, the two lowest ones, which will only give you 1 victory point, actually you can pay 1 less card. So sometimes I'll sacrifice the victory points because I don't have enough fear cards in my hand and I really want to get a fear space down to remove from my board. Or alternatively, some of the spaces, if your opponent already has a cube there, you'll have to pay an extra card. So then you'll have to worry about, do I really need a cube there for the variety token, maybe, for example, or one of the other quality goals, in which case you're going to need more cards.
Yeah, and in the early game too, you have a lot of choices, and on your board you could be like, oh, I'll take a red from here, a red from there. But as things go, as things progress, there's more and more pieces all over the board. It becomes harder to find spaces that are empty of your own pieces or other players if you don't want to spend the extra cards, or to just you might really want to play a yellow piece so you can finish off a row, but you're in a position where it's going to take you 2 or 3 rounds maybe to get somewhere that you like or to get the cards that you need. So you really have to decide, well, maybe I should just go for one of those lower point counts and work a new angle for that instead. And again, the scoring at the end, those quality tiles too, are what really make it interesting, of deciding, am I going to go for what my opponent is also going for? Because I feel like that's what it comes down to a lot of times, is if we both kind of are doing the same thing, maybe we'll cancel each other out, or I go for something else and hope that I'm just better at that than they are at their thing. And you could end up with completely different goals from other players, which is really interesting because then everyone is just doing their own thing, and they may overlap or they may not.
No, I think that's probably the most interesting part of this board game. Because when I think of a lot of other GG, there's just the one goal everyone's fighting for. Or there's multiple goals, and maybe, sure, you're the one who's spec'd in collecting artifacts or something, but you're still earning a couple other points for killing goblins or whatever the case may be. This, you have to decide, what am I actually going to do? And as you said, depending on if your opponent's went first, it's like, should I can still go for variety, but he already put his value token there. If I put it on individuality, I could probably still get similar number of points, and I get those 3 bonus points for being first.
Yeah, and it's also that thing of, do I plan something early on thinking I'm going to go for one of those goals in particular, or do I try to spread myself out so I could do multiple if that comes up? Do you put all your eggs in one basket or not, I guess? Yeah, and I think that's really cool. Definitely the thing you said early on is the fact that the theme, I think, of this game is really cool, but it really is
just there.
It's just, the theme is limited to what we said. While you're playing, it's very much an abstract game, which is fine. I do think it's a little bit of a missed opportunity. Another game that comes to mind is one we reviewed that's a much more indie title, if you recall, called And Then We Held Hands.
I was just thinking that.
And that is a game where it is very abstract, and it's also about feelings. But I felt that in the mechanics, it was more so still tied into the theme in an abstract way. Whereas in this one, it really doesn't feel like, am I angry now that I'm playing these anger cards? It doesn't really matter.
I am when you take my spots.
Right. Which is fine. It is what it is. But it's not as cool as, I like all the artwork and I like the idea of it. I do kind of wish it were tied in more strongly to it.
No, it is very nice. It's pretty, a lot of these cards are really cool, especially since it's not just happy cards. There's fear, there's anger, there's sadness. This kid's alone on a swing set, which is very depressing. It's cool concept, and It just, though, when you start playing, you're not thinking like, oh, this is joy, this is great. You're like, okay, yellow card. I need another white card.
Right.
It doesn't maybe land as much as we'd hope, but we're also big theme guys, so that could just be us. I do think it's a little cute when you move your piece and that's how you pick the card. It's an interesting way if you don't simply just draw a card from the top of the deck. There are like 4 cards out, but you can't take any of them. It's like, I guess I'll move left because I want that left card or right card, whichever direction you move.
I do like that, how there's this synergy kind of between the board and the cards in that way. It does. It really helps you make your decisions, I think.
And we should mention that the board, as well as actually the quality tiles, are randomized. You can switch it up, so you might not always have the board layout like this. There could be a bigger grouping of blue. Maybe all the depressing spaces are spread out amongst the map. So that changes things up a little bit, which is nice, especially for the cards. It doesn't make things like, I always know that a joy is touching a fear or something like that.
For sure.
But once again, like mechanics, I do find a lot of cute, really fun mechanics. The theme, though, just I don't think stuck the landing with them. Now let us become one with Inner Compass and discover its crits and misses.
Crits. The puzzle-like gameplay has you choosing between more or less optimal plays at any given time depending on your position on the board and which cards are available for you to go for.
Attaching what card you're going to get to what direction you move is interesting and can feel very rewarding if you move into the direction to get the card you need to get a bonus card on the space you wanted to go.
The quality tiles provide various end goals for players to choose from that could overlap or conflict with one another.
You'll have to decide which 2 out of the 5 quality tokens you're actually going to score, making an interesting choice of should you follow suit if an opponent chose before you, or try to go a different path. Misses. The theme's a fun idea, but we didn't feel like we were really feeling it while playing the game. You may start off thinking about the emotions, but in the end, you're just thinking about collecting colors.
It's an abstract game, and there's nothing wrong with that, but with the presentation, the artwork on the cards, and the theme and ideas behind the different objectives, I feel like they could have tied things together more strongly for a better overall experience.
A small thing to mention is that for Inner Compass, if you want something a bit more advanced, the other sides of the board here have advanced options, which actually give you different actions depending on which cubes you take. So that adds a bit more to the mechanic side. Once again, though, it doesn't help with our miss, which is that the theme, which we conceptually we like the idea of. I mean, when we first heard the game, it sounded really cool. It doesn't help stick to really feeling about truly trying to center oneself and maybe find some inner peace.
Yeah, it's kind of an odd thing because I feel like, I mean, what would I prefer, that they just didn't have a theme and it was just called something else? But I think it is a matter of expectations, and that like I hear about the game and read about the idea and everything, and I'm like, oh, this is going to feel like somehow I'm going to be connected to my emotions. It doesn't really do that, but it doesn't really affect the game. It's just something that would have been cool. And yeah, I liked these, the backside of these, the different advanced rules. I thought they were interesting because they change the way you're thinking of which areas to take pieces from your board, specifically, a little more so than the basic side does. So I thought that I would probably play with that side, I think, most times when I wanted to play Inner Compass.
I would agree. It was really fun because some let you move your square so you can sort of get around some things and then push onto the emotion you need and whatnot. Once again, the mechanics, I found this to be a pretty fun, enjoyable game, just moving around, collecting the different sets and thinking about what is best optimally. Maybe I'm not getting the most cards, but if I can move across the board quickly, I'm going to get more points on that, whatever that quality tile I'm looking at the time.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I don't know that there are really any other games that I can quite compare it to say, if you like this, check this out. I think the way it combines, again, your movement with which cards you take and how you choose the goals is fairly unique, other than saying, generally if you enjoy more abstract titles or I don't know, it's not really made me think of kind of like Azul, just because you have these square pieces that are colorful and it's pretty to look at, but I don't know that it's really like too many other games out there on the market. So I think that's something in its favor for sure.
It definitely stands out in both mechanics and themes. It's just unfortunately, unlike maybe some other games that mention that theme, there aren't many. This one doesn't actually come through in feeling that. Pun sort of intended.
Yeah. Well, let us know how you're feeling about Inner Compass. In the comment section, you can tell us, have you played it? What do you like? What don't you like? Are there any other games you'd recommend that are similar to this? Do you think those mechanics maybe lend themselves somewhere else? Or what would you do differently to make that theme tie in? Is there something that you think that would have been easy to do? Or maybe for you, the theme actually just worked?
Maybe you think our hearts just become cold and frozen and we're just unable to feel emotion. You can let us know in those comments down below. But until then, I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
And this has been a Roll for Crit review.
Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and support us on Patreon. That would make us happy.
Maybe the next video is the one where Jonathan does a silly dance.